Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Meanahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Hey now, today we're going to take a look at the DC Comics deck building game Teen Titans set. This is yet another standalone expansion for the DC deck builder, and potentially for the other Cerberus deck builders, although you know they don't really play well together. The Teen Titans set, every set has something a little bit different about it. Like the last set, the Forever Evil set, was all about destroying cards, and there was things that gave you victory point chips, stuff like that. The Teen Titans set's big thing is ongoing cards. Now, there have been ongoing cards before. There were the location cards. I think there were a couple of cards like Force Field that would stay in play. But now there are a ton of different cards of every card type, superpower, equipment, hero, villain, what have you, that are ongoing and stay in play. And there are a bunch of other cards that get more powerful because of those. There's also a lot of really cheap cards in this set. And of course, many of the characters and themes and artwork that are in this set are from the Teen Titans section of the New 52 universe. That's the New 52, not the cartoon. Sorry. Let's go ahead and take a brief look at a bunch of the cards that come in this set. If you want to know how to play, you can look at some of my older DC deck builder reviews. Then we're going to come back. I'll let you know what I think. Part of the main deck to the lineup. Starfire, she actually used to be a promo. Now here's a new version of her. Starfire says that once during each of your turns, if you control 4 different card types, you may destroy a card that you control. Discard pile into your hand. Blue Beetle says that once during each of your turns, if you control 7 or more cards, you get to draw a card. Each of your turns, you may discard a card. If you do, put a non-starter each of your turns. You may draw until you have 5 cards in hand. This is his ongoing ability. Here's the attack is that each player puts an equipment they control from their hand into the lineup, and when you play him, you gain all equipment from the lineup and put 1 into your hand, or just gain +2 power. Blackfire does the same thing the Clock King does, except back. Pass 1 to the discard pile of the player on your left, destroy 1, and discard 1. Terra, I guess kind of a fan favorite there. She says that once during each of your turns, she has an ongoing ability. In this case, since he's the only card in the stack, that just means it's always on until he is defeated. His abilities cards have always featured ongoing, but I think there were almost always exclusively ability, and other cards actually kick off of that ongoing ability and get bonuses. So, for instance, here in play at the end of your turn. Inertia is a villain ongoing. Once during each of your turns, you may discard a card from your hand, and if you do, it says that at the end of the game, this card is worth 1 victory point for each different ongoing card in your deck, and silent main deck and put it into your hand. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at some of the other, I guess, is a location. So there is that. Daughter of Trigon, you may pay 1 less to defeat villains and supervillains this turn for each additional card type that you control, which remember means just playing cards as well. Cloak of Raven gives you +2 power and an additional +1 power for each different superpower that you control. Tim Drake, you put a hero from your discard pile into your draw 2 cards. Actually, let me go ahead and show you some locations as well, because there's a lot of new locations in this set. And they are ongoing cards as well. Just because they're locations doesn't mean they still don't count as their ongoing abilities. So if it's a star or an asterisk, then you just get 3 power. So that's it. That's a lot of the new cards that come in the Teen Titans set. Obviously a bit of an odd set. Let's go ahead and get to my final thoughts. In and of itself, the Teen Titans expansion is a solid game. It's DC deck builders. I happen to have a fondness for a lot of the characters associated with the Teen Titans, so I was especially attracted to this set. And so I think in just that aspect, it's a hit. Ongoing cards in play to kick off of them. And if you get starved for those ongoing cards, which can easily happen, there's not that many. I mean, there are a lot of ongoing cards, but there's not these big flashy cards, and you're able to pull off like these infinite combos. And I mean, that's why DC deck builder is fun, because it's a very light, very light deck builder, and you can do cheesy stuff like a lot of the base cards are really cool. I mean, I'll definitely keep this set around. In order to missions are really cool, at least a few of them are. So there's that. The superhero cards themselves are okay, some because they went way outside of the box and actually changed the way the game is played. I haven't seen anything like that with DC deck builder being
the DC deck builder, and I will keep it around and mix it with the other sets, but Real Titans, that is the Teen Titans standalone expansion for the DC Comics deck building game.
Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.